In this video, I'll be taking a look at the new 3DS XL Hori TPU case. Now this case will normally run you $12 to $13 depending on where you pick this case up. Now this case is a case that you put on the 3DS. It's not a case that you put the 3DS into. It's one that you put on the 3DS. Now this case is basically good for people who are worried about scratching their 3DS, chipping the paint off, getting dust on their 3DS, stuff like that. If you're a person that drops your 3DS a lot, or if you're a person that bumps it a lot into objects, I would highly stay away from this case because this case is very thin and I highly doubt this case would actually survive a fall if you're looking for that drop protection. So I would highly stay away from this case. But like I said, if you're a person that's really worried about scratching it or getting it dusty or fingerprints, or you don't like the feel of the 3DS maybe, then this is probably the case for you. Now this case is a TPU material, so it's not really hard like a plastic case or like a hard case, and it's not a really soft material like a silicone or a gummy case, something like that. When you first take it out of the box, it is more of a kind of a flimsy case, but once you put it on the 3DS, it does become more harder, but it's still not as hard as a plastic case. It's somewhere in between silicone and plastic, I would have to say. But overall, I do love the feel of this case. It does have a very nice feel. And the only color you can get this in is clear. And as you can see, I have the new 3DS XL in black or carbon, whatever they call it. And as you can see, it's really not a clear case. It is clear to some extent, but it's not fully clear, as you can see right here on camera. It is more of like a foggy case. So maybe if you own like one of those new 3DS limited editions, or if you have a color that you really bought and you really like it, then this may not be the case for you, because as you can see, it's not like the 3DS without the case. It's kind of a little creamier. I wouldn't say totally dark, but a little bit more creamier, so it kind of like makes it a little foggy when you're looking into it, but it's not bad by any means. You can still see the 3DS under it, but just not as clear as if the case was off. And this case does protect the whole 3DS except for the hinge right here. The hinge is unprotected, but everything else is protected. And it does have all your cutouts, like your cameras have the cutouts, your power button, your stylus, your game slot, everything has a cutout, so you don't actually cover up anything. So you can play with this case on. That's basically what it's meant for you to play with it on. And I do actually have the older Hori TPU case for the old 3DS XL, and I must say this one is not as good. I'll explain it right now. One thing I do like about this case that they did in the old one, which I didn't really like, is that this one, thankfully, on the new 3DS XL, they actually took off the Nintendo branding. It used to say Nintendo 3DS XL. Well, I do like Nintendo, of course, but the thing with it is the logo was kind of big, so if you had like a favorite color, or especially I had the Pokemon limited edition a while back, it really covered up some of the design of the 3DS, and I couldn't really fully see my design because that logo was covering it up. I do love how Hori took that little logo off of Nintendo 3DS XL right there. They took it off, so it is pretty much a clear case. It got no branding or no logos on it, which I do fully enjoy, just because I would like to show my system off and I wouldn't want that getting in the way, of course. Now for the bad side, there's really only one bad thing I can say about this case compared to the old one. If you're buying this, you're definitely probably going to be happy. It's just a minor complaint, but it's really not Hori's fault, I must say, but it's still something to note if you're thinking about picking this up. On the top of the system, I don't know how well you can see it, on the top of the system, we got these 4 brackets. These are 2 separate pieces I forgot to mention. So the top piece goes on the top part of the 3DS, and the bottom piece goes on the bottom pieces. When you get it out of the box, they are two separate pieces. It's not one full piece. And on the old 3DS XL, the original model, these used to actually clip onto these little 4 holes. But since the new 3DS XL doesn't have those holes, this thing just lays on the bottom part of your 3DS, which kind of sucks. Honestly, it's not bad. When you're actually playing your system, it won't really pop off. But when I was trying to put it back in my case, I actually noticed that it actually lifted up a little bit. So you may want to take note of that if you're trying to buy this case. But overall, during normal gameplay, it has not came apart. It is very, very secure on the 3DS. You do not have to worry about that. Just maybe when you're moving it around or something, you may once in a while find that it actually lifts up. But it's not bad. By no means. I'll go ahead and demonstrate it right here on camera. So as you can see, it's lifting up right here. It is lifting up, as you can see. It is very flimsy and lifting up. But as long as you don't move it, it's probably never going to lift up like that. It's just something I would like you to note or take note of if you're trying to pick this case up. And as you can see, it has all your cutouts. It has your cutout for your stylus. It has your cutout for your charger. It has your cutout for all the buttons. It has your cutout for your lanyard. It has cutouts for your 2 cameras, of course, your power button, your headphone jack, and your game slot. So it has basically all your cutouts that you need on the system. Nothing's going to be covered up, and you don't have to worry about that. One nice thing about this case is it is very thin, so that means you can still put it in one of those 3DS cases. I do have one over here. I'll show you. This is the one I actually use, the Mario one, but you still can put your 3DS in here even with that casing on because it is very thin case. So that's one thing I do like about this case. It is very, very thin. Now, if you were wondering with this case on, in here it fits perfectly. And one thing to note about it is this case was actually made for the old 3DS XL, so that really tells you a lot. With this case on, with the new 3DS XL, fits in the old 3DS XL casing. That's very good to note. So just take a note, if you do see an old 3DS XL casing, you can still use it on the new 3DS XL. That's what I've been doing. I haven't really upgraded my case. I've actually been using the same case for years now because if it fits, why buy a new one, right? So this is the one I've been using. It does fit. Well, a little thing to note about the 3DS is that it's actually a little bit slimmer. It is actually a little bit slimmer by a couple of millimeters. It's not by a lot, but it is slimmer by a couple of millimeters because we went from standard SD card to micro SD card. So it is slimmer by a couple of inches. So that means you can still use the old 3DS XL cases if you were wondering. Overall, I am very happy with this case. I highly recommend it, especially if you're going to be scratching it or it's getting dusty or you want to protect the paint or you have a limited edition and you don't want it damaging, then this is a very good case. I highly recommend it. Now, the main reason I got this case is because I was out around town somewhere. I don't remember where I was, but I saw a new 3DS XL and the outside of it was basically messed up. It was laying on a table. I think I was at a restaurant and it was laying on a table and I looked over and saw it and it had a whole bunch of scratches on the outside. It had paint loss. It was terrible. So I immediately ran out and bought a case for my 3DS XL that I can actually put over it while I'm playing. Or if I just leave it out and I don't want to get dusty or whatnot, I can just leave it out like this and I'm good to go. So that's mainly the reason I picked up this case, for that reason. After I saw that, I knew I had to pick that up. That is not a good sign. So I definitely picked this case up. Now, another thing is there's not really a lot of new 3DS XL cases on the market. They make a lot of cases you can put the 3DS into, like one of these cases that open up and you put the 3DS into. But if you're looking for a case that goes on the 3DS, this is probably about your only option right now. They do have some metal ones, but the problem with the metal ones is I'm a little worried it may scratch my system or whatnot. And so far there's been not any complaints of this scratching your system. I even had the old one, and I can safely say the old one never actually scratched my system. I actually took it off a couple of times, maybe 3 times, to check if my system was actually scratched. And I looked really hard with a flashlight and everything, and I seen no scratches on my system or no paint loss. So if you're worried about the case actually rubbing up against your 3DS, I don't think you'll have any problems. Now, I have been using this case about 2 to 3 weeks now, and I must totally say I've had no problems with this case, except for maybe one time the back of the casing, like I showed you, actually lifted up. But if that's really a thing that's going to deteriorate, going to choose your decision or make you not buy this case, then I don't know what you're doing. This is a very good case for your 3DS. I highly do recommend this case. I will update you in the future about if there's going to be any scratches on my system, but I highly doubt this case will produce any scratches on my system. It is a really good case. And peace out. I'll see you guys later in my next video. I'm out.